Welcome back to Philosophy and Ethics in Games, the series where I break down the stories in some of our favorite games and ask the tough questions to figure out what is right and what is wrong. I'm Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today we're going back into Fabletown for the second episode of The Wolf Among Us. In case you missed any of the previous episodes in the Philosophy and Ethics series, I've linked a playlist in the description below. As I continue to break down this and other games, I'll add new videos to the playlist so you can find them all in one place. Episode 2 of The Wolf Among Us opens with Bigby in an interrogation room, with what can only be assumed is a human detective, asking questions about the head that they found on the doorstep at the end of the previous episode. It isn't entirely clear if he's a suspect or just someone they want to question as a person who knew Snow White. But none of that really matters, as the detective and the cops watching the interrogation all pass out without warning. Ichabod Crane used some kind of spell to knock everyone out and wipe their memories, and he comes strolling into the room once they're all asleep like he owns the place. Knocking people out and wiping their memories isn't really ethical at all in this circumstance. And he says that he wiped their memories for the prior 24 hours, which just raises all kinds of other problems. Imagine one of those cops has a kid that they promised to pick up from daycare, but the memory wipe caused them to forget. And now their wife is leaving with the kids because this is the 5th time this month and they'd promised to stop drinking. But the only way that they could have forgotten is if they'd been drinking again. Sure, they'd gone to one of those meetings and made an appointment to talk with the department psychologist, but they must have broken all of those promises. Where was I? Oh yeah, the memory wipe spell is unethical. Ichabod gives Bigby a ride back to the woodland, where Tweedledee is waiting to be interrogated. But someone is already there. Bluebeard. Unless I'm very much mistaken, Bluebeard has a rather sordid past as far as fables go, with the little bit of research I did pointing to him being fond of marrying women and then making himself a widower through various means. I'm not going to go into detail, but I do wonder how in the world a guy like that would have anything to do with law enforcement in this community. I mean, sure, Bigby has his faults and he isn't exactly innocent, but at least his stories boil down to trying to get a meal. What's Bluebeard's excuse? Another quick side note, as I noticed a couple of familiar voices in this episode, with Bluebeard being one and TJ, Toad's son, being the other. I couldn't place them for sure, though I thought Bluebeard sounded a little bit like Kamatu from Skyrim. Then it hit me like a ton of bricks. The voices I was hearing were Clementine and Lee. The incomparable Dave Fennoy is Bluebeard, and Melissa Hutchison is TJ. That's not really relevant, I just thought it was cool and wanted to share it with anyone who might not know. Anyway, for the second time in a Telltale game, we are given the option to use some pretty questionable tactics to make someone talk. The last time we were playing as Clementine, and we're given a chance to beat up Abel to find out where our friends were. This time is a bit different though, as Tweedledee hasn't technically done any real harm. He and his brother did assault Bigby, but there were extenuating circumstances in that event, and we don't even know that he has any relevant information to our case. That being said, I did hit him once as payback, before focusing on trying to pry information out of him by other means. Mostly, I tried to ask the right questions, and I smoked his cigar because smoking's bad for you and I wanted to save him from some serious health complications down the road. The talking kind of worked, as he admitted to knowing beauty and having a boss that Faith stole money from, but I wasn't able to pry the details I was hoping for out before Bluebeard intervened and tried to play bad cop. Unwilling to let Bluebeard upstage me, I intervened by grabbing his arm and was on the verge of showing him just how big and bad I could be when the door opened and Snow White walked in. My first thought was that an imposter had somehow made themselves look like Snow, and that was kind of right, as it turns out the head we found was from an imposter. All of that is revealed as we make our way back to the business office, with Snow informing Bigby that Mr. Toad and TJ were waiting to be interviewed, as TJ had discovered the body that belonged to the head of the imposter. And I just want to say that the fact that someone could get a fake glamour and make themselves look like another fable opens a can of worms that we really don't want to ignore. The whole thing kind of makes me think of Polyjuice Potion from Harry Potter, where you could basically give yourself the body of another person, meaning you could commit crimes as them, probably open a bank account as them, start up a small business as them, build that business into a global empire with branches on several continents before meeting the person of your dreams, settling down and getting married, or, other nefarious things best left to the imagination. In this case, after a little investigation and inspection of the body, we find out that the imposter was a troll named Lily, who happens to be the sister of Holly from the Trip Trap bar. Lily has apparently been missing for a while, and now we have to tell Holly that her sister won't be turning up at family events anymore. Before we do that, however, we get the chance to interview TJ about finding Lily's body, and we learn that he was swimming in a river when the thing was tossed in, scaring the bejesus out of him. She had a cinder block tied to her ankles, and my first thought was that the whole thing had something to do with the Mafia, as that's famously their MO. However, TJ also mentioned that the person who tossed the body in the river said, "Stop laughing at me," after doing it, which seems a bit odd for a Mafia hitman to say. I suppose it could be a self-conscious hitman, but let's just put a pin in that theory for a minute. After talking to TJ, Bigby and Snow decided they need to head over to the Trip Trap bar to talk to Holly. But Ichabod tries to prevent Snow from leaving, citing her safety as a concern. At this point though, given that the last time we split up I found her head on a doorstep, I chose to keep Snow at Bigby's side. There's a million possibilities as to who the killer is and what they're after, but I'm not willing to let Snow out of my sight unless I have to. Back at the Trip Trap, there's some convincing that has to be done before Holly will talk to us. But she eventually opens up, and we learn that she and her sister hadn't spoken in a while. But Lily was working at a place called the Pudding and Pie, a strip club that doubled as a brothel of sorts. And this revelation comes on the heels of the question about why she would be glamored as Snow White, with Holly insinuating that it would probably be due to a client's request, and just wow. The idea that someone could make themselves look identical to someone else, and that person could then be hired for sex work while looking like the other person, breaks so many ethical and moral lines. Your body should be yours to do with as you wish, not something to be used at someone else's leisure. That kind of violation is not okay in any sense. There are enough people out there who struggle with mental illness, convincing themselves that they have a relationship with a celebrity, or even with just a person in their life who they're obsessed with but doesn't know they exist. Imagine they could just take a picture of that person to someone who could then be made to look like that person down to the last detail. They mention in this episode how there is an official witch or set of witches that does the glamours for the fables, but that they are also aware of black market glamour and how it isn't illegal. But I just can't help but think, why? Why not just outlaw those things? It might not put a full stop to the practice, but it would provide some legal recourse for those who perform and partake. And there's no way something like that should be okay. That rant aside, Bigby goes down to the Pudding and Pie, while Snow goes with Holly to make the arrangements for Lily's body. The owner of the club is a scumbag by the name of Georgie, based on the Georgie Porgy poem, and I really don't like him from the first moment. He doesn't really want to cooperate, and I did my best to resist the urge to break everything in the club because I figured that doing that would play into his hands and make him lock up. I did bust up one of his neon signs though, just to show that I was willing to smash things, and that finally got him to give me the bare minimum of information. As he was calling the business office to complain about me, I wandered into a back room where I'd seen a woman peeking at me, and I wound up getting some help from her in the form of an appointment that she booked so she could send me to the building where I might find more answers. That building was a cheap motel just a couple doors down, and when I tried to skip the front desk and just go upstairs, as she'd given me the key, I was stopped by Beauty, who happened to be working the front desk. Remember in episode 1 where I said that I wasn't a marriage counselor? Well, that mindset has come back to bite me, as it turns out that Beauty has been moonlighting as a hotel manager to pay for the bills, as Beast hasn't been able to make ends meet doing whatever job he's managed to find, and she doesn't want her prince to know that she's actually the one paying the bills. That is already way more involved than I wanted to be in their marriage, but it gets worse as Beauty leads Bigby upstairs so that she can save face if someone sees him, and Beast catches the pair about to enter a room. And of course, Beast assumes the worst, knowing that Beauty apparently has a type, and he proceeds to fight for his wife's honor, even as both Bigby and Beauty try to tell him what's really going on. He does eventually catch on, but not before Bigby slams him through a door of the room that he wanted to enter anyway. And that room is most definitely the scene of the crime that they're trying to solve, as the bed is covered in flowers and blood. A little investigation uncovers several clues, pointing us to someone who is apparently obsessed with Snow White. The perp hires prostitutes, makes them play out the story of Snow White, with props like an apple and a bed made to look like the one that Prince Charming found her on, and then either kicks them out or kills them. It isn't really clear how long this little game has been going on, or how often he's lived this fantasy, but the biggest shock of them all comes in the form of a photo found on the floor. Rather, there's a series of photos, all taken from a distance and showing the real Snow White, but the last one shows none other than Ichabod Crane leaning over a sleeping Snow White doppelganger, or what I hope is a doppelganger, with his hand up her dress as she sleeps. Now, this could all just be some crazy misunderstanding, with someone getting a fake glamour to look like Crane, like what happened with Snow, except that the game reveals that Crane has been watching Bigby the whole time in the magic mirror. Picking up the lamp on the table behind him, Ichabod smashes the mirror out of anger, and the episode ends. All I can say so far is, wow. That is not the direction I thought things would be going. But it's starting to get really interesting now, and I can't wait to see what happens next. I'm doing my best to resist the urge to play ahead, writing and recording the scripts for each episode before playing the next, but it's been really difficult to do so. I knew I didn't like Ichabod, and now that dislike has taken a whole new road, as it looks like he's obsessed with Snow White, and he's a murderer to boot. I mean, I suppose he might not be the killer, but things are not really looking great for him at the moment. We'll find out more next week, though, as we keep rolling through The Wolf Among Us. Let me know in the comments what choices you made. Did you take Snow White with you to the trip trap? Did you get a little more aggressive with Tweedledee? Did you leave anything intact at the pudding and pie? Share your choices and reasoning down below. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up button to let YouTube know it was worth your time. For every like the video gets, a unicorn gets its wings, so don't hold back. Subscribe to the channel as well, if you're not already, as Bigby threatened to blow my house down if I don't hit 6,000 subscribers before we finish the series. Oh, and there's also the channel memberships and a Patreon for those who want to go above and beyond. Signing up for those things gets you various perks, including early access to videos, getting your name on the screen, and something special for top-tier Patreon supporters, so go check all that out through the links below. That's all I've got for now. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.